All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kwan, Dr. Kwan, is the volume okay back there? It's good? Okay, excellent. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming. They made this too short. I know I'm short. I'm not that short. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming out tonight. We are hosting a town hall this evening on two very important topics. We're going to be discussing, as the agenda says, our new trash hauler, our waste haulers, Valley Vista Services, and then we'll dive into a discussion about our proposed sewer rates. In between, just to keep the evening flowing, we're going to pause for a 15-minute Q&A specifically on the trash services, and then we'll hold a firm 15 minutes there so that we can move on to the sewer rates and then come back for Q&A throughout the entire night. So that's the agenda for the evening. And before we go into the presentation, I just want to introduce some folks. And I wanted to first off start off by thanking my bosses, I should say, our council members that are here. Our Vice Mayor, Tony Cho, is in the back. Council Member Hunter Chang is here. Council Member John Chow is here. And Council Member Calvin Lowe is here. And I believe the mayor is on her way. So thank you for the council for spearheading this particular town hall. And next, I want to just highlight, we have some staff members here. We're here for these particular topics tonight. However, if you want to talk to us about anything else, if you want to talk to us about roads, if you want to talk to us about you name it, we've got a host of staff here, starting with our city engineer and Parks and Public Works director, Amber Shaw, our finance director, Ms. Hillary Girola-Leone, our fire chief, Mario Rueda, our community engagement manager, Nicole Tibbett, and I saw Kathy here. Our special programs coordinator, Kathy Lamb, is also here as well. So you have a host of city staff here. And I don't think I forgot anyone. And thank you to Elaine for coming out as well from the senator's office. Really appreciate it. But now I'm going to turn it over. What I'm going to do before I turn it over to Director Shaw is I'm just going to ask Valley Vista to introduce themselves. And we're going to start off really quickly. We have a host of folks here from Valley Vista Services to answer questions, to provide relationships and try and meet folks and get to know each other and go through that process. And just so you know exactly how many people are here servicing San Marino, and this is really the face behind the service, the family behind the service. So I'm going to start off and introduce David Perez, who's one of the family members who owns the company and the president of the company. And then from there, if you guys wouldn't mind just individually introducing yourselves kind of in a popcorn fashion, if you want to start from here, and sure. We'll go just yell it out for the
So good evening, everybody. I'm David Perez. I'm the president and CEO of Valley Vista Services and also a family member. So, we're a family business. I have my director of operations, Tomas Solis, here, who's in charge of all the operations in the field. Our controller, finance director, Jesse Quintana, our client relations manager, Griselle Vasquez, and I'm going to let her introduce all of her people. Please.
Hi, I'm Griselle Vasquez. I'm the client services manager for Valley Vista Services. It is such an honor to be here tonight in your beautiful area here. I have my team, Elizabeth Bontes, she's our client services supervisor, as well as my leads, Crystal, Luna, and Viviana Molino. And these ladies are actually at City Hall every day. So if you haven't had a chance to stop by and visit them, feel free. Come say hi.
Thank you. And I believe we also have Mr. Ed Chen here as well. So thank you. Thanks. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Shaw. She's going to start going through the slides on this one. And then once we go towards the end of the slide, we're going to ask folks to line up at the microphone if you have questions, because we have folks watching online via Zoom and we have a translation service as well online. We're going to have to make sure, and thank you, Hillary, for the microphone. We're going to have to make sure we use the microphone and we'll take turns and go through that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Shaw.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Can everyone hear? Is it working? Okay. So thank you for being here. As city manager, as Sandra said, our first topic this evening is to talk about our trash services and welcoming Valley Vista Services to our San Marino family. At the May 21st, Go.
There we go.
No, it should
work. It is on. I wasn't clicking through this.
Okay. No, that's okay. All right. So go to the next slide. All right, so at the May 21st meeting of the city council, they unanimously approved a new 10-year exclusive contract with Valley Vista Services to provide solid waste and recycling services, which began on May 31st. As you should all hopefully have been aware and have seen them at your homes, servicing you this past week and a half or so. Since 1957, Valley Vista Services has proudly served cities throughout the greater Los Angeles area with a strong commitment to customer satisfaction, environmental responsibility, and community engagement. So first thing here, action required. If you haven't already, there's a survey online that's been put out for our community to fill out and tell Valley Vista Services exactly the service you have, what day you're serviced, what type of service, number of barrels you have, any special access for codes or gate keys or anything that's special required. So if you haven't done that yet, definitely reach out to the team that's here this evening, pass the information along to your neighbors. We have had a great response to the survey. I think we're close to 3,000 surveys from the community that have been completed. So we're doing great. And I know we've had a lot of door knocking and collecting information other ways and visits to City Hall. But definitely pass that along if you haven't already done that. In terms of your service, you probably received some postcards in the mail from the city ourselves and as well as Valley Vista Services regarding what to expect. So in terms of trash day, your trash day is not changing. Backyard service will remain the same. It will look a little different, but you're still going to be serviced. You don't have to take your curbs to the cart. Valley Vista Services will come into your backyard, side yards to collect your trash and remove it for you. And so in that regard, that part is staying the same. Containers for the transition period, you're going to continue using your own trash barrels if you have barrel service. If you had a bin for a state service, those should have already been replaced. But if for some reason it's not, definitely again, reach out to our Valley Vista Services team that's here this evening and let them know. But we think the vast majority, if not everyone, has their bins now. And then the collection system, if you didn't see the city council presentation, is going to remain a 2-stream or 2-container collection system, which the majority of our residents should be used to that have barrel service. Bin service, you will eventually get a separate cart for the separation to be in compliance with SB 1383. Valley Vista Services does have the only high diversion organics waste processing facility in Southern California that's certified by CalRecycle. Is being compliant for separating our recyclables from our waste, and then organics will continue to be collected separately. So that will be happening, continue as we have done it, and then the state service customers will eventually get that second cart for that separation. Going into the residential and estate services, I just wanted to go over the rates for this transition period. From May 31st, when they started, through September 30th, your rates that have been charged by by our previous service provider remain the same. So you'll be paying exactly what you've paid previously for the next 4 months. As the city will issue a Proposition 218 hearing notice, similar to what you've probably received for what you're also here for this evening, the sewer services. You'll receive a similar notice for trash services. With that hearing being held in September, and then the new rates would go into effect October 1st. In terms of the residential services, the residential service barrel service rate is minimally increasing. Your rate will go up to $57.61, and that's a bundled 2-container rate. So that's basically a 96-gallon equivalent cart size. I think the carts are coming if they're not already here. So you can kind of see the different sizes. There's a 35-gallon, 32, a 65, and a 96-gallon cart. Your rate includes a 96-gallon equivalent quantity, which is basically essential equivalent to your 3 barrels that you would have now. So it would be 3 barrels of your current stream of green and 3 barrels of the black and blue combined recyclable and waste in a separate container. And that's the $57.61. For anyone needing additional containers, your additional organics 96-gallon equivalent cost would be $14. And for additional waste and recycling, it's $35.08. So that will be what's coming. We're sure that we'll be working very closely with Valley Vista Services on the rollout of new carts. There will be a cart survey that we'll have to look at right sizing, making sure everyone's getting the appropriate quantities and sizes of barrels. So there will be a process to that. but you'll be well informed ahead of that coming to you. So for now, if you have barrels, just keep using what you have. While the transition period is through October 1st, the new rates will go into effect October 1st. But the barrels, we are still working on the timeline for when those will be rolled out, so we don't have the set date, because there will be a survey. Yes, even after October 1st, if the new carts aren't ready to be rolled out, you would be paying the new rates, but you'll continue using your barrels until the carts come.
They have no small trucks, they're actually walking this.
Sorry, just to, because we have folks on Zoom, we're gonna go through it, and then we'll come back to folks on Zoom to hear the questions as well.
Okay, so then going into estate services rates. So for this beginning October 1st, again, you're paying what you have paid previously through September 30th. Beginning October 1st, you'll see there's a number of rates on this screen. So for your municipal solid waste and recycling, there's options from 1 cubic yard up to 4 cubic yards. That's your black bin. If you have a lot of waste and recycling, that would be the bin you would select, and you will get a green waste organics cart to go with that service. And your rate will obviously vary depending on which size you select. If, however, you have a lot of green waste, which is what we really expect a lot of our residents to have, because we do have such lush and beautiful landscaping in our community and on our properties that are here, we expect a lot of residents may select a green bin instead, which you'll notice is a much more affordable rate. And for that, you would have options of 1 cubic yard, 1.5 cubic yard, or 2 cubic yard bins. And then you would get black carts to go with that. Again, you can always obviously add additional carts as needed, but these would be the rates, and they don't include your push out service, which is $35 a bin per month. Similar to the already paying push out service as you do now. This is just a refresher. Prior to me joining the city, there was, I think, some presentations on SB 1383 compliance. Since our carts aren't changing, we will still have black and green. It's pretty much what you've already been doing. If you haven't been putting food waste into your green waste container, that's where it should be going. So this is just a little refresher on that. There will be a lot more education and information on our compliance programs that will be coming out throughout this whole transition period. In terms of other services that's included with the new contract, there are 2 annual collections of up to 10 bulky items per collection for each customer's premises, and that will be from your backyard or side yard location. There's no additional cost for that. As you, in addition, we'll continue to have holiday greenery collection and recycling for 3 full weeks from December 26th through January 15th of each year. What's new is we'll now have 2 community shredding events where you can bring up to 10 bankers boxes of paper to be shredded. And we'll continue to have 2 free compost distribution events. It'll look a little different. You won't have to bring your bags or buckets or shovels. It'll be pre-bagged for you, and you'll get, I think, up to 5 bags per distribution event that you come and get the compost from. So that will continue. And then what's being offered, similar to what you're probably already used to, our previous provider had an annual bulky item collection day where you had your 1 day in July, and that was your only day that was at no additional cost for pickup. To help support this transition, Valley Vista has offered to do a citywide pickup. This will be curbside. This will be citywide on July 26th, but it'll be an unlimited number of items because we expect that a lot of residents may have been collecting things expecting a July pickup. So they will be picking up an unlimited number of items from your curbside on July 26th. What's also different here is they are also accepting e-waste. I don't believe we were previously collecting e-waste as part of this collection. So you can, in addition to your regular household items, they will accept your e-waste as well. And again, it'll be an unlimited number. You'll be seeing flyers being mailed to your homes along with some other outreach. They're finalizing those flyers. And so I just want to give you a sneak peek of that is going to be something that's added for all of our residents. And that actually concludes everything I was going to cover on our trash service, but I'm happy to answer any
Which
questions.
size of the organic bins and the co-mingled bin? How many gallons?
So the question was regarding the size of the organics and the black waste and blue combined collection bins. So for the residential standard service, it's 96 gallon equivalent. which is the same as 3 of your barrels that you have now. So it's basically equivalent to 6 barrels total is what you'll get. And obviously, I know some residents have different constraints in their properties, so they'll be looking at if a 96-gallon cart doesn't fit for you, how to get you something that's equivalent of smaller carts to make that work.
My first question is, will that rate information be made available on the city website soon?
Yes.
Okay, and then I'll just give a little feedback. My last day with our previous vendor was May 27th. They came and took my bin. I think it was within 2 hours, the Valley Vista crew showed up and gave me my new bin. And I know there were some concerns about their system of collecting was gonna be more noisy and obtrusive. I work from home. I'm very sensitive to noise on the street. I have found it to be much less intrusive. It's one brief 5-7 minute period where they're going down my block and they're gone, as opposed to in and out for like hours during the day. So anyway, that's my.
Thank you for your feedback.
First off, Mr. President, I'd like to say that if you started working in 1957, you've aged very well.
Thank you. I can't claim that. Third generation now.
Third generation, okay. A couple of questions, or comment first. My pickup day was Thursday, and so the last Thursday was the first one, and everything went fine, and so no problem at all. I congratulate you on that. Thank your folks for being out there and being friendly and taking care of everything. I do have some questions about these extra charges. You know, we're gonna have eventually 2 of the large carts that they'll come and take out. What happens when somebody like me gets going on pruning stuff in the springtime? I remember one week I had my barrels that Athens took away, but I also had 19 of these black trash bags. And Athens took them all away because it was springtime and we. What will Valley District do in cases like that, or we get charged for every bag? What's gonna happen on that?
That's part of the bulky item collection, right?
I think we did allow for some green waste to be collected as part of bulky items, so you could potentially, as one of your 2 bulky item pickups, schedule your extra green waste at those times of the year to be collected as a bulky item then versus having to get additional carts for 1 or 2 time occurrence. Of course, you could always get a bin or something if that's really what's needed for a particular property, but you are able to use your bulky item pickups for a large pickup like that as well.
The other question, are you gonna have a system, are you gonna give us paper bills, or can we put you on automatic pay and that sort of thing?
We can send you a paper invoice via USPS. We can send you an email invoice. You can pay online. Oh, sorry, they can't hear me.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be sitting down while you're speaking to me either. I just,
You can mom.
you know, how we want to play this.
So the question was, how will we invoice the residents or the customers? And we can invoice you via paper invoice, via USPS, email invoice. Of course, you can pay online. You can set up auto pay if you prefer. We accept all forms of payment.
So, but you'll have a time to set up it. I'm quite amazed if you've had 3,000 people sign up on this thing. I mean, we have a little over 4,000 households in the city. You know, that's about 3/4 of them have signed up, which is absolutely amazing to me. How are you gonna go after the other 25% that,
The same way we've been doing it, sir. I mean, that's a testament to my team here, whether it's via mail, social media, telephone. Also, we've been going door to door, knocking on doors, talking to folks. Our guys in the field are bringing in information. City staff is collecting information. We have a team at City Hall every day when City Hall's open to meet people and collect information. So it's a process and it's taking time, but we'll get it done.
You're doing a fine job on the process, and I don't, one last question. So you've been at this for about a week or so.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what has gone really well, and then what kind of glitches you had in the first week, and that's all. But thank you very much. I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you very much.
So
My question, first question would be to the city to ask. This process, were there complaints about Athens? What led us going out?
So in terms of service, no, there was no service complaints or minimal, I should say, ever regarding the service. It really wasn't a service problem. It was a contract entering that was not in compliance with SB 1383 that needed to be negotiated. We had an outdated contract and ultimately we needed a new contract. And through our discussions, we were not able to reach a mutual agreement and thought the best process was to solicit a competitive process that all haulers that were qualified were invited to participate with, including Athens. But they were not the selected hauler at the conclusion of that process.
Second comment I would have was the comparison of the bids gave a cost comparison and it made Athens look extremely high. Until I saw this schedule and realized that the 7 barrels that they pick up every week, it will work for $57 for me.
The price that they proposed was to go to a similar amount of barrels. So the 138 was for 6 barrels also. They were gonna be rolling out brand new containers as all haulers, no matter who had been selected, would be provided because that's what's required to be for SB 1383.
And not to slang it too much, our collection on our street didn't go so well on our first day. We had these 7 barrels, one of which was picked up on Thursday. I called on Friday. They said they would come out. Very nice people, by the way, on your phone service. Didn't happen. I called on Monday. They said it would come out and contact the driver. It didn't happen, but it did today. So they're gone. So I recognize you're starting out and there are going to be blips, but.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate your understanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda Gutierrez. I just want to say that I really like this new trash company. I personally own a lot of real estate and I will tell you Athens it's awful. And from my understanding, Athens walked away. As a business owner, I think then they quit, right? When people walk away in negotiations. So I really appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having this kind of roundtable and getting to know the residents of Valley Vista and also explaining some of the fine points of the plan that's coming together and the details of the fees. My question is a little bit out of the ballpark, but not still dealing with waste. My question is about the street sweeping services, and I believe that the street sweeping services are scheduled at a certain time. And I agree with most of the times, but where I physically live, I'm very close to the Starbucks. And during the street sweeping time, that area is usually used up. So I don't know if there's a way where the commercial areas, which is kind of like down on Huntington, those get used up during the day. If there's a method that we can kind of come together and maybe have those happen earlier and maybe cross those side streets that are joining commercial area at the same time, I think that would be best to serve those areas because there is a lot of coffee that's spilled in that area and it does need it. Thank you.
Yes, so similar to our trash transition, the street sweeping obviously was a very short turnaround as well. The general hours are scheduled at this point, 7 to 12, where it's permittable in terms of not being filled up with parking. So they're working through that as well to understand each of the commercial areas or areas that are affected by commercial parking or high school parking or otherwise. So they are flexible and working with us to adjust hours to be a little bit earlier where needed so they can get in before that 7 a.m. where parking starts.
So noted.
Hi. Thank you very much. Just a quick question. You mentioned something about $35 push up per bin. Can you just explain what that means?
So I believe the current rate for your push out service, so that's if you have an estate bin, so the large bins on your property. If you have that, I think your rate's around $20-ish. Don't quote me because I don't know that number off the top of my head. But the new charge effective October 1st, after the Proposition 218 hearing would be $35 for them, for Valley Vista to go onto your property with their vehicle, pull the bin out to the street, similar as the way it's always been done, to empty that container and put it back. And that's per bin. So if you had multiple bins, it would be for each bin, but that's just the push out charge.
Thank you.
A quick question on the 96 gallon. Specific question. So our house is located below the street, which means they have to go down a hill and up a hill. So in the past with Athens, it has been determined by weight. It has not been determined by gallon. They just pay attention to the size of the cans we had. It was whether they could pick them up and put them in the trucks or not. So my concern or question will be 96 gallons, if it's that heavy, that big, and it becomes that heavy, how are you gonna get that up the hill? The last 2 times they visited, the gentleman came down on foot. Which meant they had to go up a hill. If I had had a 96 gallon, I don't know how much that would weigh. What will happen?
Right now, yeah, I can take that. So the question was, if the containers are too heavy, if you've got a long driveway, whether it's uphill or downhill, below the street or above the street, how will we service those carts because of the weight? We haven't run into that problem yet, but if that was an issue, it's a 96 gallon equivalent. So if that means we have to give you 3 35-gallon carts, that's what we'll do. We also have a small truck available for the longer driveways and the steeper driveways and the access issues, where we'll come in, put the carts on the vehicle, take them out, dump them and bring them back in. And that'll be on an as needed basis, case by case, but we will be able to get your services
So I
provided.
filled out your survey.
Okay, thank you.
So you should know, but I'm just letting you know twice that it didn't happen. It just so happened we didn't have a lot of trash, but I mean, the thing is, if we end up bulking it up a little bit. I don't want.
There's no weight penalties. It's not,
No,
we're not
I don't want
gonna,
someone getting hurt trying to get it.
I don't want anybody getting hurt either, trust me. That's why I have Tomas. So if all else fails, he'll be walking down your driveway.
Happens to answer the others to keep trash.
We won't do that. Unless you're filling carts with dirt and concrete, we're not gonna do that.
We service, our mentality to service all the community, so regardless.
Real quick, these some of the guys are great, they've been very helpful. I'm on Center Avenue. I was wondering, pop perhaps, so eventually you have to have bins regardless, right? There's no more trash cans. I got a big yard. I need about 10 trash cans a week. And that guys are great. Half the time, for me, at least for me, but this guy is great now.
Thank you.
They'll pour it in, but I just feel bad for the guys. There's no, so you have no trucks at all, trucks for trash at all, it's just all one big dump truck.
Well, we have split stream trucks as well as trucks that we're collecting, but we are separated. So there are some homes we're visiting where people are not separating, they're just throwing material in regardless of the cart. There will be an education process and we will deliver new carts at some point where you'll have a blue cart or, well, actually a black cart, excuse me, for your recyclables and trash and a green cart for your organics. And we will separate it that way. Now, as I just mentioned, if there's an access issue or extremely long driveway or a weight issue, we will have a smaller vehicle that'll go down, bring your carts to the street where we'll service them and return them to you.
And I guess it's my next would be also, so I guess if the guy, if they say it's too, I always thought that's what I am, but is there, you guys, weight wise, you said the limit, so there's bowls or rocks, because they gotta turn it out, roll it to the trucks.
Right.
Are there cameras in the trucks?
There are.
Also, so eventually, so 3 bins, eventually packs. So I told October 1st, use our regular trash can.
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just found one more question. One slide talked about no palm fronds in the state bins. I have a Canary Island palm. The fronds are huge, and I have to cut them up even to get them into a 6-foot bins. If they're not gonna be able to go in organics, or in co-meat, I mean, right now my bin is everything. But I'm assuming from what I'm seeing here, eventually my bin will be for, I'll have to designate it either commingled or organics and then have a small cart for the alternative. So. The reason I have a bin is because I'm lazy and I don't wanna have to chop up all my yard waste like Mr. Neer mentioned, when I'm doing tree trimming. I don't want to have to cut everything up to fit into a little cart, so. What do I do with my palm fronds?
That's a challenge, and we'll work with you on that challenge. My initial reaction would be, you're probably gonna need an MSW bin and then an organics cart. But
And organics is just that. Cause basically all that stuff, I already compost, so I mean, I don't have an organic stream other than yard waste.
you're the ideal customer. So yeah, just an MSW bin then. But yeah, it's unfortunate palm fronds because of their fibrous, just like
Right.
cactus and anything else.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I have a chipper shredder,
Yeah.
that's why I throw it away. 'Cause
So
I can't grind
you
them up.
understand, yeah. So that is a challenge, but we'll definitely work with you on it.
Alright, thank you.
Thank you.
The hours of street sweeping,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
what are the hours?
So generally for residential areas, the question was, what are the hours for street sweeping? There's typically going to be between 7 AM and noon, but they may be a little bit earlier, particularly in areas closer to the commercial or schools, or wherever there's more early parking that occurs. So they're right now going through that assessment process to learn all the areas and where the parking is, and if they have to adjust hours earlier to make sure they can get to all of our curbs.
There are signs posted.
No, there's no restriction. There's still just our overnight parking restrictions that we currently have. We're not implementing at this point any sort of no parking during days and hours of street sweeping restrictions, so nobody's gonna get ticketed or anything like that. Again, they're gonna be learning all of the areas and adjusting as we need to, if they need to hit some areas a little bit earlier to avoid parking. But yes,
How do you determine a 96-gallon container is enough for one household?
these are the standard cart sizes. You're asking out of my room. So the standard cart sizes are the 90s, the 32, the 65, and the 96 gallon are the typical standard trash bins that you would see anywhere in any city.
Yes. Typically see more than one per household, and each household is only getting one.
You're getting two, so one of each, so one for green waste, one for your black and recyclable, like your waste and your recyclables, which is equivalent to basically 3 of the barrels that you have now for each, so it's equivalent to 6 barrels. Now, if you have more barrels, that means you would need potentially more carts, depending on, and that was the prices for the additional carts if they're needed. No, that's the per month charge. So it's the 57.61 for the monthly rate for your bundled 2-cart collection. And then the additional cart charges that you saw if you needed, so say you have a lot of green waste and you're like, I need another 96-gallon cart, which would basically give you 9 barrel equivalent, so 6 for green waste. That was $14. That's an additional monthly charge, not each trip.
Will there be a problem if we overfill the 96-gallon?
Not so much that you would be assessed any sort of penalty or anything like that. The contract doesn't allow for oversized containering if you're overflowing, but it does require that then our Valley Vista team would reach out to you to help educate and figure out if you need additional carts or anything like that but you're not gonna, yeah.
Or if I may, we just need to make sure it's safe for us to service. If it's overflowing, sometimes it's unsafe. So that we have to take that into consideration.
My driveway is even.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, so they would just work with you. I mean, if it's a recurring problem that you're constantly overflowing, then it might be, well, maybe you need a different cart or different size carts. So of course it has to be safe for them to move them. Okay, and these will be the last 2 questions on this for the,
We'll come back to questions.
yeah, we just want to make sure we get into sewer before, because a lot of people are here for that as well.
I'm Chris. I was very excited for the not price increase, but I just saw the sizes of that, and I guess I didn't know that I was using a 96 gallon already, and those small bins, I'm not sure what those are in reference to, but I think one of the issues with Athens is that there were no standard bins or barrels, and so I have a number of family members that live in separate houses in San Marino, and I can for sure verify that the small barrels that have been referenced is actually a 96 one, and so the rate in reality would then be like $150, right? If it were to, because for sure it's more than one 96 gallon bin, of just non-green. So is it gonna be the double or triple the price?
Well, it depends on what you would need. So, from my understanding of our previous service.
Yeah.
There wasn't, because it was just your own containers and you could kind of use what you wanted. There was a limit to, I'm surprised you would have a 96 gallon because they would not be able to pick that physically up and dump that into a truck, which is why they said all the barrels are the 32s. But regardless of, again, which provider we've gone with, that was gonna go away. Like, it wasn't just gonna be whatever container you used and you were gonna be limited to what the rate included, which was the same for all. So when you saw the comparisons, it was an equal comparison. And even if we had stayed with our previous provider or gone with a different provider, the rates that were provided as a comparison was for the same number of containers for all of them. And it would have been standardized for everyone.
Okay, so I guess my feedback now that I'm doing the calculation is, to me, for my home, we're gonna need 2 black bins and then maybe 1 or 2 green bins. And it's not equivalent anymore because I'm paying the double, which it used to be 50, but in October, it's gonna be 100 something. But I'm having people dragging these bins out through my driveway, which leads me to my second question is the security, because I've given my code out on the survey link and also multiple times different people who have asked to access my trash. Before it's one driver and we knew him for years. And so that's my second question about the security, because I know without the cars, you have to hire a bunch of people really quickly, and that's just an additional risk that I'm thinking about. And third, we continuously get increases in property tax, and I'm just waiting for road fixing because we have quadruple the amount of dump trucks that have not been, I don't know, assessed on the corrosion over time. So those are my
I was gonna.
I'll do the security one. Just on the security one, just because I want to answer this one, because I've spoken with Mr. Perez personally about this. Public safety being one of the most important things in San Marino, absolute highest priority for our city council. That was one of the questions I asked Mr. Perez and his team when we were going through the interview process was, how do you vet your staff? How do you vet your employees and what's going on? The first thing he offered was, anybody from your police department that you want to send over to our HR department to sit down and talk with HR, to go through any files, to go through anything that you want, he offered that. And he reiterated to us about the vetting process that he goes through with his staff, the background checks and everything else. So he instilled upon us the confidence that he's able to do it securely, that his staff are trusted, his team are trusted. So I just want to reiterate why I jumped in to cut Ms. Shaw off. I apologize, but I wanted to make sure that you all knew that that was something that we directly asked Mr. Perez, and he instilled that level of confidence that we're comfortable. Now, I would say, limit the number of people you give your gate code out to. So, all right, we're going to move on to Mr. Neer, and then we'll wrap up here the questions. Thank you for your questions.
As far as I know, and this could be wrong, that Athens, they did the street sweeping and the trash pickup. In terms of cost to the city, I think I read that the separate company, not Valuevista, the separate company is doing the street sweeping is gonna cost us the neighborhood of $500,000 a year, maybe 536, something like that. So the question that I have about that is, under these new contracts, is the city, and then I have a second question, but is the city incurring more costs than with the street sweeping with separate companies than they did with Athens?
So for street sweeping, yes, we're incurring more cost, and that would have changed regardless because the Department of Industrial Relations, so the state, put out a basically an opinion that street sweeping is, and I think it was a few years ago, is subject to prevailing wage. So we're not the only city. All cities that are putting out contracts for street sweeping services are having to pay exorbitantly higher rates because we're having to pay prevailing wage, which we didn't have to in the past. That's really where the bulk of our costs increase. We've also enhanced the service. So that's something else that we added to this contract was, as you may have recalled, we were only doing street sweeping weekly for half the year, and the other half of the year we were doing a bi-weekly sweeping schedule. We are doing now with this new contract, we're gonna be sweeping weekly year round. But that enhanced service and what we did to try and balance this and not impact our general fund was to look at other funding sources. So particularly when it comes to the Safe Clean Water Measure W, you're able to use that for things that benefit stormwater quality and having clean streets and keeping the debris and litter from entering our storm drain system is a benefit to stormwater quality. So we're able to use some of that funding to help absorb this exorbitant increase. And it's something we've worked with the street sweeper. If that opinion were to change from the DIR, I know there's a lot of cities and trash or street sweepers and others lobbying because it is such a huge impact to not just us, but cities across the state that are facing these huge increases. If they were to reverse that decision, they have agreed that we would be able to revisit that contract to lower the
I would
cost.
appreciate it if after this stuff settles down, you can let us know the additional cost to the city with the street sweeping the way that it is from the way it was before. Second question, and I could be 100% wrong on this. I understood when Athens was doing things, there was no charge to the city for trash pickup and likewise to the schools for trash pickup. How are we going forward? Is the city gonna have to now pay for trash pickup? And then what about the schools or?
No,
how's that looking at?
No, the city still receives free services for trash hauling. That's not changing. They'll continue servicing all of our city facilities. Under our new contract with Valley Vista Services is going to be at no additional charge to the city. So we're not incurring any cost for that. The school district is a different story that came from our in consultation from an advisement with our city attorney's office. Most contracts that previously included schools as part of their contracts is actually not legally permitted. So we are not able, we're continuing to provide services through the transition period to the school district. So they weren't left without service or having to figure out like we were in such a short turnaround time, what they're going to do. So they'll continue receiving free services through this transition period up till October 1st, at which point they can select their own hauler and negotiate their own cost. But they will incur some cost, but generally the schools often receive reduced cost. Because they're our school districts. So that's something they'll have to work out.
If I understood what you just said, after October, the schools are gonna have an additional cost that they didn't have before.
Yes,
Do you have any
unfortunately.
idea what that would be?
I have no idea what prices they're receiving, but they're able to, because they're not, even though the city has an exclusive trash hauling agreement, and certainly we hope that they choose to use Valley Vista Services. But it's ultimately their choice. They're able to use any trash hauler because they are not part of the city. They're within the city, but they're not bound by the city's rules because they're the schools. They can select any hauler that gives them the rate that they deem meets their budget needs.
Thank you.
I know you want to move on, but I just touch on a couple of things that were brought up, and I'm sorry, Mr. Neer, possibly? Okay, so Mr. Neer asked what was the biggest challenges to the transition, and then not to sound so
Yeah.
familiar, but Chris, I don't know your last name, sorry, but what you brought up is one of the biggest challenges, and we understand public safety, we understand wanting to know that your homes are safe and secure. And the biggest challenge we had was the fact we had to jump in and get something done within basically a week and a half's time. So yes, there are a lot of people out there, a lot of different trucks. They're all full-time employees. They're all vetted. We've just pulled people in, supervisors and truck drivers, and even myself at times. Tomas is in the field. Everybody's out there ensuring that we get the services provided and that nobody gets missed. Once we get this a little more under control, there will be a driver that will come to your home. So at that point, if you want to change your codes, make sure that only one person has it. We understand that 100%. we intend on getting to that point. Right now, it's just one of those situations, we gotta have all hands on deck to get the work done. That will change, trust me. So hopefully that answers both questions. Thank you. I know you want to move on.
So so that'll conclude our trash portion of the session. Again, you know, as Mr. Perez said, this has been a very short turnaround. Most cities have a year to 18 months to do this. We had 60 days and it wasn't by choice. But you know, we've all been working really hard together to get this done, and it is going to be a little bumpy. So we're just asking for our residents and businesses to have patience through this process. But it will get dialed in, and you'll see as they are able to get their correct trucks that they need to order. There's a long lead time for those things and to get the carts.
I have one question. Who are you? I didn't understand who you were.
I'm the public works director and city engineer. Yes.
You know a lot about trash?
I've learned an awful lot about trash if I didn't already know it. So.
Yeah, I mean, what the company we had 50 years, and I know they were the best company. I think it's a big mistake what you've done. Not even asking us, telling us what's going on. I thought you treated us pretty bad. It was one of the best services we had in San Marino was our trash.
If I could, I know you're cutting off the session, but I really prefer to not end on a negative note. This transition is really unprecedented, and it's not gonna be perfect. But to me, it's how a company does what I heard, full court press. And I have to say, on our Thursday pickup, there were 6 people there. And they were friendly and informative and answered my questions. The next day, on a 2 days later on a Saturday, I was out doing some yard work in the front, and the neighbor's gate was closed. They didn't have the driver, or one of the 3 people there, gave me his personal cell phone and said, have the owner text me and we'll come back. And sure enough, within an hour, they came back and opened the gate and picked up the trash, the bin, the rollaway. So my point is that, you know, we all have to be patient. Change is never easy, but I've been very impressed with the full court press, the effort that this company is doing in a very narrow window. And so I would just encourage all of us to give them a little time and see how this works out. But thank you for.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to our next topic of the evening is our sewer system, our wastewater rate study that was prepared, that I'm sure many of you were here for, the Proposition 218 hearing that will be held at the end of this month. So just to talk a little bit about the city's sewer system, this kind of goes through the sewer system by the number. So the majority of the system is at least 50 years old or older. Some pipes are up to 100 years old. We have 47.5 miles of gravity fed pipes. We have 3 pump stations that are, all 3 of them are currently going to be, one's under construction and the next 2 are following right behind it, that are currently in construction as we speak. We have over 1,000 manholes. We have 45 separate connections to the LA County Sanitation District sewer trunk lines. And in the studies that have been done, we've had 8,000 linear feet of known areas where we've had issues with root intrusion, fats, oils, greases, other buildup, some of those things. And there's a very complex regulatory framework that is required for just the management of a sewer system. This gives you an overall map of the city that shows you all the sewer lines throughout the entire city. In blue is everything that the city is responsible for. The yellow lines that you're seeing there, kind of yellow and orange, those are the LA County Sanitation District county trunk lines that run through the city that they're responsible for, but that our system eventually feeds into because they do all the treatment. We don't do any treatment within the city. We just do the wastewater collection and transfer it to the county for treatment. So this predates my joining the city, but in 2019, there was a sewer system condition assessment report that was prepared by Dudek engineers. They used CCTV or closed circuit television video inspection footage of approximately 20 miles of the city's sewer system. And that was collected between 2015 and 2018. And that's about 40% of our system that was inspected. And that report revealed that less than 20% of the 433 segments of sewer lines that were inspected were defect free. So that means 80%, over 80% had some sort of issue that required, that we had a recommendation for some type of repair. Okay, hold it now. So going back to that, so then, yes, so that's the condition assessment basically revealed that of the 433 segments that were inspected, about 20%, or less than 20% were actually defect-free, meaning that 80%, really had some sort of recommendation for a repair. And so this chart here gives you a little brief snapshot of that. You can see about 67%, the third line item down is the lining of a sewer line that was recommended. And that's over 13 miles of lining of sewer lines out of the out of the 20 that were inspected. Then there's obviously replace in place where they're gonna have to replace those portions of the 8-inch line, or if they're doing excavation for a point repair or another in-situ type of repair that they're able to access with a small lining piece, or just some other like intrusions and things that needed to be trimmed. So there was a significant amount of repairs that came out of this report that are necessary just for the 40% that was inspected. And this isn't even the entire system. This gives you a snapshot again of the city, looking at the city's line. So this shows you what was camera. So if you look at this slide, everything in, go back to this, yeah. So everything that's in blue was not CCTV camera for this report. Everything in yellow was, and then the orange again, in this case is all the county lines. So obviously we didn't inspect those and they're not a part of this assessment report. But that gives you just an idea of what in the city was as part of this assessment. And then going further into the sewer system conditions, these are some of the issues that were encountered, where you had misaligned joints, where the joints had separated, or excuse me, distracted by that. Or you have other issues here with the sewer line coming apart, and you can see where there's broken linings of the sewer line. So that was really the why of why we did this sewer study, or why we went forward with this sewer assessment for just to understand the conditions of it. But now I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Eskandar to kind of talk about why we did a rate study.
Thank you, Amber. So this rate study, as you saw from Director Shaw mentioned, this study started in 2019. In 2019, at that time, the City Council had an observation, and the observation was that we have a sewer that, as Director Shaw mentioned, is over 50 years old in many places, and in many places nearing 100 years old, right? That's an old system. Oh, we're trying to fix the lights. Oh, you're dimming the lights. Gotcha. So you can see that. Okay, thank you. So I heard from a few of you mentioned that you have properties in other cities. In these other cities, in every other city, you pay a connection fee for the sewer system. There is no city anywhere else that operates the way that San Benito does, in which a service like this is provided and it is unfunded. So at that time, the sewer assessment was conducted, and then COVID happened, and here we are trying to fix what we have, essentially an unfunded system that needs an incredible amount of repair. I'm going to dive into the finances a little bit because that's really the key part of this, right? The why is because we are in a financial position that we need to be proactive about maintaining our infrastructure, but do not have the necessary financial means to maintain that infrastructure, right? If we had infinite amounts of money, we would not be here asking for this particular assessment. But this is an issue that we need to address proactively. You've heard the council members say it at the dais. We have to be proactive and not reactive. You've seen this before here in Huntington, that we've had potholes, excuse me, not potholes, but sinkholes in town. You see this in other cities where underground utility infrastructure collapses or fails, right? Roadways are undermined by water leaks. You're seeing sewer systems break. And at that point, what do? You have to go out for an emergency repair, and you have to pay emergency rates to have someone come in and make emergency repairs and pray that no one was harmed in that failure. and then come out and fix the road, fix the pipes, fix the road, and then open that road back up. And that's gonna be in the cost of millions of dollars for even the smallest sinkhole along Huntington Drive, right? So what does the sewer system, the sewer rate pay for? Well, it pays for operations and maintenance, right? So it pays for the CCTV that we do on an annual basis. We do cleaning on an annual basis. And then it also helps us pay for the long-term large capital needs. So as Director Shaw mentioned, right, if we have to remove pieces of pipe in the ground, that's what this rate would pay for. If we have to reline piping, that's what this would pay for. And it would also help us create an adequate reserve. You're going to see the importance of a reserve here just in a couple slides, but we have no reserve. I want to repeat that. We have no sewer reserve specifically set aside to pay for sewers to be fixed in San Marino. So if a sewer calamity happens right now, that means that the council is then left with the decision of having to take money out of our general fund reserve, which we use to pay for police officers, to pay for firefighters, to pay for you name it, if we needed to dip into those reserves, right? That's what those reserves would be used for. But because we don't have a sewer if we had a sewer reserve, you wouldn't have to touch that, right? So that's a little bit of the logic there. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is the why. You want to make sure that you have enough funding to make sure you operate and maintain the system, that you have all of those costs incurred are taken care of by this specific rate, right? You're not using funds that could go to public safety for sewers and those types of things. Importantly, when we collect sewer fees, they have to be used for sewers. By law, they cannot be used for anything else, right? So that amount goes here and stays specifically here. And as I mentioned, it helps alleviate the pressure that we have, the deficit pressure that we have overall. What this would do is it would help, one of the things it would do, in addition to helping us fund the ongoing maintenance, it would alleviate, as you see at the bottom there, about $222,000 worth of operating and maintenance pressure that is currently on our general fund. We would be able to pay for that from sewer fees. The same, it just continues to go up every single year, right? So when the council this year had to make difficult decisions between programs to be offered or expanding positions different places, this funding would remain in the general fund and could come out of the sewer fund. A little more about the finances here. There's going to be two charts that are going to be difficult to see, but I was remiss in not mentioning. All of this information is available online. Our entire assessment report, several hundred pages, and then smaller synopses of those. If you go to sanmarinoca.gov/sewer. And for the Zoom folks, she's putting it online as well. sanmarinoca.gov/sewer. And it's also at the top of our homepage. You can go through all of the reports. You can go through the assessments. All that information's there. And you'll see these charts in different forms, but you'll see them there where we're talking about the amount of money. And I don't know if the laser pointer will work. It might barely. The left column there where you see this waterfall chart for fiscal year 26, that assessment expected us to spend 9.9, just under $10 million to make sure we repair our sewer system. That's the amount of work that the assessment said that we needed to do based on camera actual inspections of your sewer lines. I can tell you right now, we're not doing $9.9 million of work. That money does not exist. However, we did, and the council did approve about just under $3 million worth of work to replace the lift stations. That work is currently ongoing right now. What's a lift station? It's exactly what it sounds like. Someone laughed. Yeah, it moves sewage from one elevation to the other and down the pipe to make sure it flows the right way, right? If we don't maintain those pumps, that's a problem. I'm not going to describe. But you'll see here, year over year, right? We have between 2.3 all the way up to $5, $6, $7 million worth of work that we should be doing. We should be doing. That doesn't mean necessarily we will be doing, because the rate that's being proposed that the council's recommending, $26 a month, will not cover that amount of work. It won't. But we have to start somewhere, right? Right now, the funding's not coming in, so we can't actually start anywhere, but we should start saving up a little bit to start doing this work. This next chart, you're going to see we've been incredibly transparent about the amount of work that has to happen. And again, you can't see it great here, but this exact chart is on the city's website and has been there for years. Every single one on the left-hand side, you're going to see the projects that are outlined, and it says things like sewer main rehab, let's go pipelining on number 6, manhole inspections, overflow emergency response costs, and then sewer lining and repairs across the different areas, right? So this lays out exactly the amount of work that we should be doing in order to avoid issues with our sewer system. So this is all there. This was studied, and you'll see an inflated cost, 44.5 million, as we try and use inflation numbers. But in real, today, present day dollars, is about $36 million if we went out and hopefully did all the work today and got a bid that was reasonable, right? But you're not going to do that work in one day. So here's the meat and potatoes of this. As we went through the actual study, the subject matter experts that we brought on that do rate analyses and different things for a living, this is what they do. They eat, breathe, and work these calculations. Gave us 3 scenarios. They gave us scenario 1, 2, and 3 that you see for consideration. Scenario 1 is the 100% CIP, which stands for Capital Improvement Program or Project. At that rate, we would be able to do all of the work that was put in those charts before you. That rate would have been about $82 a month or $984 per sewer unit. Every single home, residential property counts as 1 sewer unit. Single family residential home is 1 sewer unit, okay? So that's what the study said we needed. Then they gave us 2 other scenarios and said, here's a 75% and a 50%. The council members considered this in February, and the council said, well, we've never had this, and I'm ad-libbing, so the council can come up and correct me if you'd like. The council said, look, we've never had this particular fee before, and we want to start at a rate that's reasonable, and we want to start it at a rate that would not burden our residents because we've got a lot going on. And so they said, look, here are the 3 scenarios that you presented that, we think experts are telling us where experts think we should be, but the council members live here, they understand it, they understand our residents' constraints, many of whom are on fixed incomes, you name it, right? And the council said, I want you to proceed with studying the 50% as the absolute cap, okay, being $43.50 as the cap. However, they went even further. The council said, I don't want staff to set it at $43.50. I would like for you to set it even lower than that at a 25% rate. And that's what the council gave us direction to consider. So the Prop 218 notices that you saw at your home, the mailers that you saw, have the legally required information that has the cap, and that is the 50% rate at the maximum it could be, the $43. $43 would be the present day price. So the question was with or without inflation, question mark. So that $43 present day, and there is no inflation other than what you see, the 3% inflators are the max. So the maximum increase per year would be 3%. So the council then said, I'd like for you to look at setting it at 25%. So 25% of our CIP needs, right? So if I need $82 per residential home, the council said, start it off at $26 and find a way to work within those means. Just because we need it doesn't mean we can afford to do it right now. And we said, absolutely, we will take those marching orders and we will work to find a way to get it done. And so that rate that you're seeing that is being proposed at the hearing is $26 a month for a single family home, which is 1 sewer unit. And it's different for different sewer units. So different parcels, commercial properties and things like that pay different. They've got different calculations, and that's all based on a metric. The sewer unit metric is a metric that's used throughout the Southern California region. About 9 million-ish properties are subject to that sewer unit calculation. And so it's not something that we pulled out of thin air. It's a vetted process. So that's the number we're talking about, $26 per month. That amounts to about $312 per year. Now, let's go over to this next slide, just for context. These next couple of slides, and we'll wrap it up here pretty quickly. Next couple of slides. So you'll see at the top, there's a blue bar at the very top. And that's our capital and operating target. That's where we should be to be able to start doing work, right? And at the 26%, excuse me, $26 a month rate, it's gonna take us some time. As we mentioned, the council said, you're not gonna go from 0 to 100. Take your time and slowly work this in and take the time to get your funding together and then start the process, right? We don't want to burden our residents, and that's what this chart's showing here. You're going to see that we have to accumulate that funding over several years to be able to do that work. And this here again shows the same thing, right? So the millions of dollars worth of work just shown a slightly different way. The top bar being the fully funded CIP, right? That's the fully funded rate level. And then the very bottom bar is the 25%. The middle is the 50% cap. So the green bottom line is where the council has asked us to set it for the public hearing. Now, this is the slide that I think is probably the most interesting. Where are we relative to our neighbors? And I'm going to walk you through this slide. So follow me on this. On the far left, you're going to see it starts off at 60 at the top and goes down to 0. And that far left axis shows the monthly cost for each different city. The green bar in the middle being San Marino's proposed $26. On the far left, you see Arcadia at $9.21. On the far right, you see La Cañada Flint Ridge at $49.30. These are the rates. You'll see this again in our presentation at the end of the month, but you'll see all the rates going out. So our near neighbors, South Pasadena, $15.23, Monterey Park, $22.46, Beverly Hills, $45.67. So we're right there in the middle. But here's the interesting thing. Every one of these cities has been collecting these fees for decades, right? So folks in Monterey Park, Alhambra, South Pass have been paying these fees for decades and decades. This is not something that any one of these cities started within the last year or so. That takes me to the right axis here on the right, where it talks about the millions, where I talk about the reserve. One of the most important things is to be able to have reserves to deal with emergencies and deal with crises when they happen. And you'll see that every single city on this chart, ranging from La Cañada Flint Ridge that has about $6 million in sewer reserves, all the way over to Beverly Hills, who has just under $60 million in reserves. San Marino currently has $0 in reserves for sewer fees. Again, we've done a great job saving for a long time. This specifically shows that we have a need here in the sewer system. And you'll see this slide again at the end of this month. So that's that slide here. And I'm going to just show again this one. This particular slide is the same thing, just showing only the rate comparison. So it's missing the reserves. I'm going to leave it here on this one, and we'll go to questions on this particular one. So we'll go here and then, we'll take questions. And then from here, what we're going to do is we'll just take questions. If folks want to line up for sewer stuff first, then from there, we'll line up all the way to whatever you'd like. Is Randall here to turn the lights back on? Sorry, Mr. Neer, start me off.
To say that addressing this is an important thing for the city to do. And I personally have no problem with your $300 a year sewer charge. But here's my issue here. And you have said we have no fund. I disagree with that. When I was the treasurer, when I was in the city council, we had $15 to $18 million in reserves. And I always asked, why, which was far more than other cities had. I asked, why did we have that much reserves? Because it's taxpayers' money. The answer was because we were building a fund to replace our sewer system. So I posit to you that we do have a fund. That we've got 15, 18, we did, I don't know where it is now, funds aside. And then we were saved by technology. And this was 15 years or so ago when we could do all this camera business. So we didn't have to replace our sewer system. We didn't have to spend $15 or $18 billion of our reserves to do it. So we were saved. And I agree that we need to build a fund, we need to have some kind of a modest tax to, but I posit to you. That we have got 15 or 18 million, I don't know what the number is, of reserves that were set up by the councils at that time. And was taxpayer money to address this problem, and I don't think you're taking that into account.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. So yes, it's absolutely true that we have a 40% reserve level in the city of San Marino. We currently have about off the top here, so $17 million in that 40% reserve. Of that, that is by policy, and I think it was done maybe before or just after you were on council, that the council adopted a policy that said our reserve level shall be set at 40%. The city shall not dip below 40% in reserves. That's a modest number. La Cañada Flint Ridge is hovering around 85% in reserves. That's up to you to compare, but I'm going to give you real numbers. So that about $16-17 million is plus or minus 6-7 months of payroll if there was a real crisis in town. You've heard Chief Rueda talk about the big one. You've heard him talk about natural disasters, the one that you can't escape, right? That if City Hall starts crumbling tomorrow, FEMA's not going to write me a check tomorrow. I need cash in the bank to be able to make sure that I'm paying your public servants to show up, that your police officers are paid for, and your firefighters, and you name it, have money to come in here and do that. What I don't have money for, I'll tell you, is to continue to fund capital work. There is no capital reserve, right? So someone has to make that difficult decision of choosing what to spend that money on. Do you spend it on sewers today and have $0 left if there's an emergency tomorrow? I wouldn't recommend that. Would you spend half of it on sewers and not have that money left over to pay for the maintenance of roads? I don't know that I would recommend that. They're different trade-offs, right? So that money has to be spent and accounted for different ways. And so while we do have reserves, it's not specifically set aside for sewers. That's your everything money. That's for everything. We mentioned the fire engine needs a new fire department. Excuse me, the fire department. They need don't get a new fire department. They need a new fire engine. That's $1.2 million. Yeah, I had the same surprise face. $1.2 million for a fire engine. That ambulance that so many residents have come to be reliant on, that ambulance that we run, $350,000. If I spend that money tomorrow on a sewer, where am I going to come up with the money to pay for that ambulance in 2 years when he needs to replace it? These are the policy trade-offs. So good question. Sir.
Yeah, I first have a quick question to make sure I can make my comments fit. If I'm understanding correctly, what is being proposed to be approved by city council they'll only be taking 25%, but they're authorized to go to 50. Is that correct or not?
Yes, and let me summarize the question again for Zoom. Thank you for the reminder. So the question is, are they authorized to go to the 50% rate, but they will only be taking the 25%? Yes. So the council is authorizing to go, that they have the authority to go all the way up to 50%, but that they are setting it at the 25% rate. So the short answer is yes.
Okay. So I absolutely agree that this needs to be done. It's a service that needs to be taken care of. My concern is, I look at Beverly Hills, and I understand, yes, these are funds that can only be spent on sewers. But why do you have a fund greater now than what you're collecting? It's just, that to me seems ridiculous to have a fund that large. And what worries me when I read how this legislation that authorizes all this stuff is written, once you start, you can't ever go back. I mean, once you're authorized for the 50%, and it's 50%, 3% a year increase ad infinitum. So I understand South Pass and San Gabriel, they're much lower in what they collect than what you're proposing for us. And that makes sense because they've been collecting it for many years, but we're starting down the road now. And at what point will we be having collected for decades and you're still collecting the same amount? It just seems like it would be helpful for the city council to put in some sort of a sunset measure to sort of stop in 10 years, 20 years, and come back and look at this and go, okay, do we still need this at the dollar figure that we started with? Do we have an adequate reserve now that we can now maybe lower it? And I would actually advocate that maybe $26 is a little low because we do have such a large amount of deferred maintenance. Maybe you want to start a little bit higher, maybe not a full 50%, but a little higher to get going on the work that needs to be done and then drop it down on a more accelerated basis. But I get nervous when I see a 3% increase in perpetuity. That's a lot of money.
So I'm gonna try and summarize that. The question is about, there's comments and the question was about why set it at that rate? Can we do it lower? And the reserves and the 3%. And the underlying question was whether or not we can go back and address it later. The answer to that is absolutely. The council can choose next year to say, I'm done collecting it.
I've never seen a municipal government give money back.
Right. And I've also never seen, and I will tell you this again, right? I've never seen a municipal government that doesn't collect this fee.
Absolutely.
And I'll also tell you that there are almost no other municipal governments that have sunsets on some of the key funding mechanisms that keep this city so special. The public safety parcel tax, the utility users tax sunsets next year. The utility users tax that sunsets next year is about 10% of our budget, about 10% of my budget. 10% of the money that funds the lights that stay on in here, police officers, firefighters, sunsets in a year and a half. Do you know what that means? I have 10% of, this isn't the way it works, but I would guess that I've got several staff that are using that mechanism as a forecast of, well, do I want to stay somewhere where the money may not actually exist in a year and a half, right? Think about the police and firefighters when they're having the public safety parcel tax. We talk about the 4-year term, right? Last year, the council thought for a very long time, and the unfortunate part was the timing with the school bond. That was very difficult ballot to be on. But the sunset terms, I will tell you, you and I don't disagree on a lot of things, but I'll tell you this one thing I will advocate, and the council's heard me say this, that having things sunset puts a finite point on something where you know that you're going to lose that revenue stream and you're in panic mode for X period of time to figure out what to do. So we try and plan for the future, and then you let your elected officials, who I would say I've never seen any elected official fight as hard as your council here does for the things that are right for right now. This is one of the most difficult conversations. These two topics tonight, I cannot imagine the council at any point, even the mayor when she was elected, 7 years ago, thought at any point that these two conversations would ever come up. And they have grabbed the bull by the horns and said, hey, this is the right thing for San Marino, in one way or another, right? Maybe not the way that staff presented it. And, we said, go for the gold. But these are difficult conversations. And I will tell you, you've got council members that are fighting for you, and it's a special place. So good questions. And I think thank you. And all 5 council members heard you. So yes, sir.
Question. Where was the money coming from to maintain the sewer system all these years? Was it coming from some kind of a tax? Or we weren't paying anything?
So the question was, where was the money coming from to fund the sewer system previously? Your tax dollars that go for police officers, that go to keep the lights on in this building, to maintain medians, all of that goes into one pot. Out of that one pot, the council then has to make that decision how to slice up that, let me use one pie, to slice up that pie and send this much here, and that much there. I would say 99 out of 100 times in San Marino, we're gonna focus on public safety and those key quality of life things, right? And defer some of this maintenance as long as we possibly can. And so the choices the council has made a couple years back, like funding the lift stations, $3 million, that came out of the same pot of money that could have been used to pay for the playground replacement at Lacey Park, or that could have been used to repair the roofs on certain buildings. So it's all the same pot of money.
If we would have had a major disaster in the sewer system, and let's say we had to pay $8 or $10 million, where would that money come from?
I didn't ask you to ask this, but that's a great question. The question was, if we had a disaster and it cost $8 or $10 million, where would that money come from? We talked about this, and your options are fairly limited. One, you would dip into your reserves, as Mr. Neer said, right? If we've got about 16, 17 million in reserves, let's say use the round number of 8. That then puts this city council below the policy set limit. So then you're gonna have to find out what to do there, right? Do you want to dip below that policy level, or do I go and bond out that work? Issue bonds, do an emergency work, and try and find some money from somewhere and finance it, right? And if I finance that, you better believe it's gonna cost a heck of a lot more than having prudent work done, right? So the analogy I'll give you is, if you had to replace your roof and you were saving for your roof and you planned the replacement a year before a giant rainstorm and leaked, it would cost you less than if you had to replace it in the middle of the rainstorm, right? And so you've been planning for it. Now, when you have to replace it at the very last minute, instead of going to buy a new car, you're putting on a roof. Sorry, I cut you off earlier. Thank you for closing that.
So the first question I have, the primary question is, today it's a monthly surcharge. Tomorrow is it some other capital improvement charge, and the year after that, another capital improvement charge, and shifting capital improvements out of your general fund to these additional funding streams. It's really just more money from the community that I suppose we're gonna be paying either way. But how do you fund your capital improvements today? And do you anticipate other capital improvement charges coming down the line? Today it's sewer, tomorrow might be something else.
Great question. So the two questions were, how do we fund capital work right now?
I think you answered that for the previous job.
Right.
You take it out of the general fund.
Right. And are we expecting any more capital charges in the future? We're not. I'm going to talk about I'm going to go back a couple weeks in a budget meeting and talk about a couple different things on this one. So right now, the work that we have in our capital improvement program for this fiscal year will put the capital program fund at $15,000 balance, $15,000 left. If we did everything that we have in this year's budget. Obviously, capital doesn't work that way. Some stuff gets done this year, some stuff takes a lot longer, right? So it kind of straddles and it's a little bit of a moving target as Director Shaw paves the road or gets the contract let for certain things, it keeps moving. If we did all of that work and had no new money coming in, starting next year, there would be no money for capital work. And so the council has that tough question to answer of, do you take money out of the reserve? Do you find another mechanism to fund the street work? Because we know the streets need repairs.
How is that capital fund created in the first place? You said there'd be no money left.
Right.
It's not a one-time.
So that's-
You're putting money in it each year.
You're supposed to be. So the question was, how are you funding it to begin with? And you're putting money into it every single year. So I've got to zoom out to answer this question, right? So throughout the last plus or minus 10 years, this particular city, not dissimilar to any other city, has been put under financial pressure. We have known for a long time, and if you go back, the council's been discussing it for several years, that expenditures will exceed revenues. For years, this has been something that the council's been telling folks, that costs are going up, right? What happened let's go exactly 4.5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, COVID happened. And so when we thought as an organization, we had a really long runway to start finding mechanisms to pay for certain things, COVID took that long runway and said, you've got 6 months before costs go up, right? Insurance costs for us, just to insure this building, have gone up $500,000 in the last several years. Tire costs. A lot of us, if we get a nail in our tire, we can go out, patch it, $20 and you're back on the road. If one of my police cars gets a nail in the tire, not quite the same. They've got to get a new tire. That's the standard, right? And a tire does not cost the same that it did 5 years ago or 7 years ago.
So the cost of operating the city is greater than your revenue stream, so this is a new revenue stream, to simplify this.
Right.
I understand. Really got a quick question for this slide, I don't want to belabor this, but $49 for La Cunada. My understanding is La Cunada doesn't have a lot of sewer, a lot of it's septic, so maybe they're charging that to build out sewer in La Cunada. But be that as it may, for $26 and 25%. The slide prior said, the study said you need to spend $10 million this year.
Correct.
All right, at 26%, you're never gonna have the money. I understand you wanna limit the impact on the community, but are we kidding ourselves? We're never gonna get there?
The question was, one about La Cunada's price point and about, are we ever gonna get there with the amount of work if we set the price at this point? You have to start somewhere, right?
Are we kidding ourselves?
No, you're not kidding yourself. No, I mean, the reality of funding anything, financing anything in life, right, is you have to start somewhere. The person that wants to buy a house doesn't kid themselves, right, the first day, and I don't mean to sound funny about it, but you've got to start somewhere, right, to save up for that. And so we have to start somewhere. La Cunada, I will tell you, has undertaken a robust sewer program. Some of the city is certainly on septic and some of the hillside areas in different places, but they've been building sewer for some time now. So
I'll just conclude by saying, I was skeptical that I thought it was an additional fee, but the fact that every other city is doing it, has my support.
I appreciate that. And the last thing, I just want to close this particular on that. Yes, ma'am, guys, come on up. We've been, when I just want to talk about zooming out, as part of the budget process, we've been incredibly transparent. The council has told us, look, you need to tell the community what it is that you have ideas for. And the ideas that we have not been hidden. We've been talking about the utility users tax that will expire next year. We've been talking about the sewer fee since last year. It was part of the priority initiatives. We've been talking about working with the Huntington to help chip away at the services that they receive and some fair share questions there. We've been talking about the transaction and use tax, a sales tax increment that San Marino is one of the only cities around. I think us and Temple City are the only two cities in the San Gabriel Valley that are exposed to giving our sales taxes to the county if we don't keep them here. So these are the measures that we've been looking at, right? So we've been pretty forward about the things that we're looking at, and there's no smoke and mirrors. I mean, anything that you have an idea, come and ask us. These are the things that we're working on. So yes, ma'am.
Two quick questions. With the sewer being 20, whatever's decided, how is that going to be collected? Is that going to be a monthly charge or will it be on our tax bill, property tax bill?
Great question. The question was, how will the sewer fee be collected? It will be on your property tax bill. So you receive the property tax bill. We would contract with the county, and the county would then put two charges that you could pay the way that we normally do, and it would be broken up. That 312 will be broken up into two payments. So you won't get anything new from us. It'll just be on your property tax assessment, and that fee. And again, it's not a tax. It's specifically a fee for a service. So that's where it's billed.
I think that's most cost effective way to do it. My second thing is about the street sweeping. It was done in the nighttime hours where there's no street parking. Now it's between 7 and noon. If you have a gardener and a pool person come on the day your street sweeper comes, what's gonna happen? I mean, or will we know what areas of town are going to be swept on certain days because someone parks in front of your house that isn't visiting you, but then you don't get your it's not swept.
So your street sweeping day won't change. So what it has been and will continue. So if it's a question of, I don't want my pool person or my yard person to come on the day that I have street sweeping, your day staying the same. And then to the extent that we were looking at the hours from 7 to noon to where we can accommodate it. It increases the sweeper's visibility to make sure they're able to do a more thorough job. They can actually see what's being cleaned, if things are being dragged, if they're missing areas, they can get them. But if there's parking there and it's gonna make it that they're not able to do as good of a job, then they're gonna adjust their hours. Instead, they're getting to those areas earlier when cars aren't there. So it's a transition process for that service as well. But they're working through those and they'll adjust if they need to come sooner, but your day will stay the same. So if you're trying to plan around your day.
It was in the middle of the night. No
Yeah.
one really paid attention. Will there be a map of the city showing what areas?
Yes, it's currently on the website. So each day's cleaning areas are on our website as well.
The only thing I would add to that is that now that it's during daylight hours, allows us a better oversight to make sure that we're on top of them, that they're doing their job. So we'll make sure that they're doing what they need. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Beck.
One thing, I think she's right. It was done in the middle of the night. So in the morning, or early morning. So it didn't impede anything. It really was most useful because if you have gardening, that day comes and things were gone the next day. So I really think if possible, with a contract to this new group, can they come very early in the morning, before 7 or 8, or during the night?
Same question as before about hours and for the audience on Zoom, and we'll continue to monitor that. So thank you for that.
Write the contract with them, so maybe it can be changed.
Thank you. I'm gonna look we have some questions from Zoom that I'll take some questions here from Zoom and then we'll wrap it up. Let's see here. This is for, as we get into this, just a reminder. So you'll see the bins in the back, if you haven't seen it, the 96 all the way to 35. And as a reminder, you'll be receiving 2 96 equivalent containers. Right, so it's not just 196, you can get up to that math, 180, 190 something gallons. No, you can leave them there. Oh, so Zoom, we'll bring them up maybe at the end. Yeah. So, okay, so let's go here. The first question, we currently have a 3-yard bin that we put everything in. Am I right that we can't continue that and we'll need at least 2 barrels? So the first question.
Okay, so going with that question, that's correct. If you currently are an estate customer and you have bins, and you're currently putting all 3 streams in your one bin, that will change. You can only put, either if you keep a black bin, you'll be able to put your waste and your recyclables in that bin, and you will be required to get a green cart. Or vice versa, if you feel like you have more green waste, you would get a green cart or green bin and you'd get a black cart. If you had the space and so chose to get 2 bins, you of course could do that and work that out as well. But that will change. You will have to go in order to be in compliance with SB 1383. You will have to have at least the 2 container collection system, no matter what service you have.
The next question, if we convert to barrels and want a total of 6 96 gallon barrels, 2 for regular waste, 4 for yard waste, what are the monthly charges? If you email us that question to the individual who submitted that particular question, we'll have someone from Valley Vista do some calculations for you. The next one, will Valley Vista supply the barrels at no charge? The answer is yes. You will be receiving 2 96 gallon barrels at no charge.
Now, just add to that, when you get your new barrels, you will have the option of keeping your current barrels that you have now, however many of them you would like to keep for yourself. You will also have the option of notating which of those barrels you would like taken away. Valley Vista will dispose of any existing barrels and try to recycle them to the extent possible. But that would be part of that transition process. You'll be notified of all of that. And then keep going down here. Will there be no pullout charge if you only use 96 gallon barrels? And that would be correct. There's no pullout charge for the carts themselves. It's only if you have the bin service, because it does require a separate vehicle to go pull your bin out. So there's a separate charge for that. But if you have barrels only, there's no pullout charge.
And just for clarification, the email address to submit questions, if you have any questions of Valley Vista, it is sanmarino@vista.gov. myvvs.com?
Yes.
San Marino at myvvs.com. All right, the next question is Shaw, we've got, what is an organics cart? Gee, okay.
So your organic cart is your green waste cart. So that's any of your landscaping from around your property, your food waste could also be going into your green waste cart. I think city manager is going back to that slide. So this shows you what is expected to go into each of the two different type of carts or barrels as you currently have them, your green waste barrel and your commingled waste barrel for recyclables and waste. But your green again is specifically the organics, the landscaping products, your food waste that go in that container.
You want to do?
So there's a question about, someone asked about resubmitting their gate code. Again, if you email or call, I would say call the Valley Vista number and they will be able to walk you through your address to resubmitting your gate code. So that information is being provided. I provided the website for the sewer information, sanmarinoca.gov/sewer. If you're interested in trash information, sanmarinoca.gov/trash. Very soon. There's another question here. How about those properties that are only 2 people versus 5 people, or those property owners whose homes are vacant? So again, if Director Shaw mentioned something about right sizing, right? So if you need, I'm gonna let you do
I think that question was actually related to sewer.
Oh, is it sewer? Oh, it does. say
Yeah,
sewer.
so
Okay.
that goes back to
Yeah.
the sewer rate study,
call.
switching gears again for a second here. So a sewer unit is based on a single family residence, regardless of how many people live in the home. And that's really because it would be too hard for us to know how many people live in each home. So it's based on what your land use is for your property and how that's assessed. So single family, regardless of how many people are in your home, it is just one sewer unit. Other commercial businesses and things would be assessed differently based on the use of their property. If they're obviously a higher use restaurant, that's when you get into square footage and what the use of the property is, and they would be assessed a higher number of sewer units, because obviously they have a lot more customers coming in and out of their property or their business. Using those sewer services, so they would pay at a higher rate than a single family.
And Mr. Haralambos asked another question about liability insurance related to trash. If you could send that as an email, we'll make sure that you get that followed up with as well. Those are all the questions we have. Yes, one more.
Regarding sewer charge, what if in year 2 a large repair is needed, will extra repair costs be paid from the city's general fund?
The question was, what if a larger repair cost is needed for sewers in year 2 or moving out? And would that be paid out of the general fund? That's a policy question. So that's a question for the council members at that time in a budget year. We as staff would have to make a recommendation on how to pay for that repair. If it was necessary, if it's an emergency work or something like that, we would make the recommendation to the council members. They'd have to weigh the policy implications of using money, between different operations or sewer, and it would go from there. So absolutely, it really depends on what the nature is and what the costs are. I don't see anyone else walking up to the microphone. Thank you very much for all coming out. We really appreciate it. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions. Have a great night. Oh, and that was mine?
That was yours.
Went okay?
Yeah. Good job.
Thank you.
I want to ask you something. How many years for the other cities that have the?
Just close it.
That have this, tax for the sewer deal. How long have the other cities been?
I just closed it. Is that good enough?